Hello everyone, welcome to Healthcare and Beyond. I'm Dr. Larry Rosenberg, I'm your host, and in this program we're going to explore the huge and fascinating world of healthcare. There's just so much to talk about in healthcare these days. People are just so interested in it. And we're going to try and capture some of that enthusiasm, try and capture some of that excitement, and try and learn as much as we can in the course of this show. We have some really great guests, and there are also going to be some interesting segments that we're going to have over the course of the season. Healthcare has been on the minds of people for a long, long time, but I think never more than the present. And I think that's for a number of reasons. I think, first of all, the developments in healthcare technology, the developments in medical knowledge, the developments in pharmacology, and the developments in medical devices have brought our technological sophistication to really a pinnacle. The quality of care and the level of care that we deliver now in the United States is unprecedented, not only in this country, but really, if you think about it, in the history of Western civilization. So it's an exciting time to learn about that, and I think people are just compelled and invigorated in trying to understand that. But there's a lot of other things that we have to talk about in healthcare as well. There has been a very active and very powerful wellness movement, which includes not only nutrition and learning how to eat intelligently, learning how to manage your life intelligently, but exercise as well. And even though there is a large amount of, or I should say there's a large percentage of people who are not as healthy as they could be, I think on balance, people are, if not becoming healthier, certainly becoming aware of how to be healthier. And we're going to try and capture some of that enthusiasm as well. I also think that healthcare finance is becoming ever important, particularly with the onset of Obamacare. And we're going to talk a little bit about finance and how healthcare impacts our finances in the small world, such as our own personal finances, how it affects our pocketbook, our personal budgets, but also how healthcare affects us in the larger scale, how it affects our economy, and how our economy is in turn affected by the changes in healthcare. So a lot to talk about. A lot of fascinating topics to talk about, so please stick with us. It's going to be a great show, and we're really looking forward to sharing this time with you. Again, Larry Rosenberg here for Healthcare and Beyond. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Healthcare and Beyond. I'm Dr. Larry Rosenberg, your host, and we have a great show for you today. Today we're going to speak about healthcare marketing, a topic which I have found fascinating for a long, long time, which is becoming ever more relevant in the ever more complex world of healthcare that we currently are in. We have the great privilege today of having as our guest Alan Ross, who is president and CEO of AJ Ross Creative Media, and it's just a great opportunity we have to speak about a number of different things in healthcare and in healthcare marketing. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. It's really great to have you here as a guest today.
Pleasure.
There's a lot that we have to talk about in healthcare and in healthcare marketing. It's a big world, and it's an exciting world, and it's an ever emerging world. But even before we start to talk about that, you have a very interesting background, and I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about sort of how you got to this point to healthcare marketing. I know you were a session musician, and then you had a production company, and I guess that branched out to a fuller type of media company. So talk a little bit about your background. I'd really love to hear.
Well, I have a bachelor's in music education from the University of North Carolina. After graduation, went to Miami, played some clubs, and then came up to New York in '74 with my wife, and wanted to break into the music business as a session player, as a touring musician. And did that for about 18 years, played with a lot of major groups, Broadway, did the whole gamut, paid my dues, took many years to get to where I wanted to be. And then started a jingle company and a music production company in 1984. And we did major commercials and a lot of film work, and in fact, still on Turner Classic Movies, the openings are our music. In 1991, I kind of felt that the music business was not going to be the same kind of business that I'm used to, and which I was right. It's a whole different business now.
Yeah,
so, went in my house in Chester, New York, in a room, and with the background of doing jingles and working with the finest creative agency people in the world in New York City, I kind of put together a business plan and started a small, tiny little advertising agency, really going after real estate developers in Orange County, because it was booming then. It was the place to be. And we did it, and then all of a sudden, a year or two later, it boomed. The agency became, I had to leave the house, let me put it that way, so we got an office. And as we gradually did our marketing, we started to do healthcare. I was called by some hospitals and some practices, so we did quite a bit of that, and that is one of our divisions of A.J. Ross. It's a major division of A.J. Ross. So that's how we got here. 25 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, did you have any inkling when you were doing music, and really as a session musician, that you had these other talents, these other abilities, these other interests? Was there something going on in the back of your mind? Because marketing is I mean, it's creative, but it's a creative in a very different kind of way than music is.
I was always a businessman.
Okay.
I always got involved with the business end of the music. I would do a jingle, or I'd be a session player, and where all the other guys would go out and have a drink at the bar, I'd stick around and watch how the producers are working. And I'd also watch how they dealt with clients. It's just something I did. Then I got into contracting strings and horns, and for people like Marvin Gaye. I was in the business. So I was a businessman. Then when I started my own agency, well, I had all that creativity, but I was a businessman. I mean, business became before the product. And then I would hire the best musicians and the best arrangers. I always had my hands in it. So, and as far as marketing, I marketed myself all my life. So to me, it surprised me. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't study it. But talking about school, I had a wonderful time in school, but I learned more in 1 month walking the streets in New York City than I learned in 5 years. Well, I learned a lot about girls and stuff in school. Anyway,
different kind of education.
It just was natural to me.
Yeah.
But perseverance. I always had that perseverance to stick with what I wanted to do. So here we are. Really,
very interesting story.
Yeah.
Very interesting story. Now, healthcare marketing itself is a segment within, obviously, the larger world of advertising and marketing, and I think it's a very specific kind of segment, if you will. What are some of the campaigns? What are some of the advertisements in the past in healthcare that you've seen? Clearly, it's evolved over probably, I would think, almost 40 or 50 years. But what are some of the notable, campaigns that you can remember that maybe served to inspire you, or maybe served as a model for some of the campaigns that you've done, or some of the campaigns that we've seen? Trace the history of it a little bit for me, if you can.
Well, history, first of all, with healthcare started as a kid with my dad, who taught me that you always want to go to the best doctors. You always want to go to the best hospitals.
Right.
But that doctors are human beings just like you and I. Well, you're a doctor, but just like
also human being. Part-time human.
So, I never was intimidated or, and to me, I'll be honest with you, healthcare, as far as marketing, anything with marketing, we're dealing with people.
You are. Yeah.
We're dealing with their emotions. We're dealing with their needs. We're dealing with branding of an organization. To me, healthcare, after I got to know it, it's, okay, you want campaigns. There is a great campaign with Sloan Kettering.
Right.
Probably the foremost cancer hospital in the world.
Which you actually sent to me. I had a chance to look at those. And they are
I'll
great.
paraphrase
They really
what
are.
it says. If you have cancer, you need to come here. And you know what? People do not want to be. They want the truth. You know, they want to know what. I believe that you need to advertise to people, and that you got to go to their emotions. And if they're not feeling well or they have a problem, that they're going to feel comfortable about going to that hospital.
Right.
And they have a reputation of being a great hospital, but their advertising is wonderful. Now there's also Columbia Presbyterian.
Right.
They have TV ads now where you see a little girl who had cancer or something wrong with her heart, and it starts talking about, you know, she starts talking. And then she says, you know, if it wasn't for the doctors at Columbia Presbyterian, I wouldn't be sitting here and having fun in school.
Right.
To me, that's heart-throbbing. That goes to here. That's good marketing. Now, you want to hear bad marketing? It happens to be at a Westchester hospital. I won't tell you the name of the hospital. And it was a print ad, all in red for some reason. Why they used red background and all that blood, you know? And it said, if you had a heart attack, get off at exit 44 toward the hospital.
Right.
That was just awful.
Right.
I mean, that's a scare tactic.
Right.
That's negative advertising.
Right.
So, you know, Mount Sinai has wonderful advertising. You know, some of the healthcare services that we work for, we've done some really good advertising. So, you know, I still believe you still have to talk to the people and to the patients and to their families, and that's what we try to do.
You know, it sort of brings up an interesting point, and I'd always wondered about this. When you talk about healthcare, especially when you talk about medical conditions, you're presenting something that is, I don't want to say negative, but it's certainly not positive. You're talking about disease and you're talking about sickness, okay? It's something that is very different from a consumer product. It's different from, you know, washing your clothes in a fragrant, you know, fabric softener. It's different from driving a brand new, you know, high-end automobile. So the subject matter that you have is necessarily somewhat negative, all right? But you have to sort of turn it into something positive. You know, you have to take a story of somebody who's had cancer, who's had heart disease, and you have to make something positive of it. I would think that that's really quite a challenge. You're not taking a neutral or a somewhat happy product experience and building on that. You're taking something that's very negative and you're trying to turn that into something that's positive, okay?
Yeah.
And for me, I think that's a real challenge. I would think that would be more of a challenge than a consumer product. Does that make any sense? And am I on the right track with that?
Yeah. First of all, I don't care if a person's going in to have just their annual checkup,
right,
or if they have a hangnail, or if they are not feeling well. No one wants to walk into a doctor's office,
right,
because of the perception that, God, you guys might find something and then tomorrow I'll be dead.
Right.
You know, I mean, I hate to say that, but people are scared to go to doctors.
Right.
But on the other hand, people almost have a godly trust of some of the doctors, you know, because you're going there with your life in your hand,
right,
and you're hoping that this doctor, if nothing's wrong, great. But if there is something wrong, you'll be able to take care of me.
right.
So yes, it is different, but it's still a brand that you're trying to sell. And you know, it doesn't only start from advertising on billboards or TV. It's advertising when you make that first phone call to the doctor's office and you have a gatekeeper who's answering that phone.
Right.
And if they're nasty, that's the end of the whole experience.
Right.
Or when you walk into a doctor's office and the doctor's office is dirty, or it's not comfortable, or the receptionist is very rude, well, that is a negative part of marketing, because that whole thing is marketing. And in today's you know, in today's world, doctors it's a very, very competitive business. A tremendously competitive business. And it's a difficult business because of healthcare.
Right.
And doctors aren't making anywhere near the monies they used to make
Right.
When I was a kid.
Right.
And, you know, you have to brand yourself, you know, so it starts right with the doctor
Right.
and his organization.
Yeah.
And then we go outward.
And I know that we had talked a little bit earlier about, you know, how the experience, how technology has maybe transformed to some degree the doctor-patient relationship, and I do want to come back to that, whether
Okay.
for positive or whether for negative. I really do think there is a good side to technology.
There's a terrific side for
but,
the digital.
But, you know, like you say, there is a bad side. But
Yeah.
I want to come back to something that you talked about earlier. And again, it's another one of those, and there's several of these sort of paradoxes or conundrums or puzzles that always seem to stick in my mind. The one about the negative subject matter and the positive advertising is one that I always come back to for some reason. But here's another one. You advertise for doctors, for hospitals, for any kind of healthcare-related products. And when you speak about a Columbia Presbyterian, you speak about a Mount Sinai, you speak about a Sloan Kettering, those are great institutions. Not only are they great institutions, they are both formally and informally by reputation recognized as some of the, not only the country's great medical institutions,
renowned,
the world's great institutions. And I can tell you that because I've either been part of it or had some connection with any of those institutions, and I 100% fully agree with you. However, not everybody is Sloan Kettering.
No.
Not everybody is Columbia Presbyterian, and not everybody is Mount Sinai.
No.
So here's my question for you. How effective is your advertising if you've got somebody whose reputation doesn't match up to the mark? Is the advertising helping them? Is it hurting them? Or is it not doing anything?
Well, first of all, I think there are doctors in Orange County, in Rockland County, Nyack Hospital, Good Samaritan, wonderful hospitals.
Right.
Orange Regional is a great hospital. There are doctors who have studied in the same places where you have
Right.
and some of the foremost doctors. So
Right.
there's some wonderful doctors. I mean, you could come up there. It's just people, for some reason, think that if they don't go to New York City, they're not going to get that level of care.
Right.
And there are a lot of practices. We did a lot of advertising in Dutchess County for orthopedics, for heart, for radiology, wonderful places. And we told them, you don't have to go to New York City.
Right.
You have the time, but you still want to talk about the doctors' backgrounds.
Right, right.
You know, there are people who will go to wherever they have to go because they're not really knowledgeable, but I think a lot of the public, especially with online and Googling and all that,
Right.
you know, and I also got to tell you, I've seen some of the best doctors at some of the best hospitals, and I won't go back to see those
Right,
doctors
right.
because their bedside manner
which
is
is
terrible.
completely the opposite. Yeah,
Yeah, you know.
certainly.
So, you know, but then there are doctors. My doctor, my internist in Manhattan's been for 35 years, Mount Sinai,
Right.
cardiologist.
Right.
I call him up. He calls me back at 10 o'clock at night. There's a
Right.
doctor in Rockland County who dealt with my knee. I had an infection. I mean, he called me at 10 just to make sure. There are guys and there are women there who care. And the majority
definitely.
of them
Definitely.
do care,
Definitely.
but there's a bunch,
Yeah.
you know, who got the ego gets in the way. But
Right.
we'll talk about marketing and doctors when you're ready to do that.
Okay. All right. I think we'll take just a short break here. We will be back with our guest Alan Ross from AJ Ross Creative Media in just a minute or two. Welcome back to Healthcare and Beyond. I'm Dr. Larry Rosenberg. Our guest today, Alan Ross from AJ Ross Creative Media. Alan, we've been talking about a number of different things, and I must tell you, I'm learning more and ever more fascinated by the world of healthcare marketing. I do want to talk a little bit, though, about your company and the empire that you've sort of built here. Talk about, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who know about marketing and healthcare marketing, but probably a lot of people who don't. So talk to us a little bit about what your company does, who your customers are, a little bit.
Let me just go back to my music business.
Sure.
When I played in New York, when I came to New York, I played or tried to play with the first 5 years the best in the world. And when I did start making it in New York as a musician and as a session player, when you walked into a room, you would be sat with the finest musicians in the world,
Right.
the finest arrangers in the world, the finest producers in the world. And when I started my company as far as production, that's who I would use. So when I came up to Orange County, because we left Manhattan in '86, and we wanted to bring our child up outside of New York City. And when I started this company, I put together 2 or 3 of the finest creators. I brought my mission of New York City up to Orange County as a small New York advertising agency, but more of a friendlier kind of agency. But anyone who works for my company or what we do has a background, and they have to intern with us for 2 years. My creative director, Carlos Vega, has been with me 16 years, brilliant, knows every facet of the business. My son, Matthew's been with me 15 years, programmer. I have people that just are the finest. But we're a marketing agency. We're not a design agency.
Right.
And let me tell you the difference between that. You know, we do a lot of web design because that's what's you need a wonderful website.
Right.
But we don't do websites.
Okay.
Now, does that make sense to you? What we do
Explain it a little bit
is
to
we
me. I'm not a
market
technologically
websites.
savvy,
What
yeah.
I'm saying to you is, if you want us to do a website, first we have to be our client.
Right.
Second of all, we have to be marketing your company.
Right.
And third of all, when we do a website for you, it's a marketing tool. From the beginning to the end, it's a custom tool that we will put together that will be just for you, with a lot of thought, and back end of it with search engine optimization and all. So all our it's all marketing.
Okay.
It's all about marketing. Now,
So your point is that, if I understand it correctly, is that the website is not sort of an isolated entity, but it forms a component of your larger strategic plan for whatever
Absolutely.
company
I mean,
you're working
we
with.
know when we
Yeah.
put a business plan or a marketing plan, as we call
Right.
it, and we go through the whole gist of marketing. It goes down from your logo design, which is your brand
Right.
identity, to your collateral materials, which you still have. We'll talk about that too, because I know we're going to talk about social media, we're talking about online, but it includes all traditional and the new way of advertising. And so that's how I do our agency. So people come to me and say, well, you know, you're charging me all this money for a website.
Right.
I have a cousin who can do this for like $500.
Right.
And I said, fine. I said, you can go to your cousin. If you're on the Yankees, you could have Derek Jeter on shortstop, or you can have a double-A ball player playing shortstop. What do you want? Do you want Derek Jeter to
Right.
represent your team, or so? My Carlos is just. Did you really say that again? But we're the Derek Jeter of advertising in the Hudson Valley, and we're proud of it. And I'm not bragging about it.
Yeah.
It's just the way I put this agency together.
Right.
You know, and that's the way I think about everything I do. So.
Now, and we'll come back to the various types of advertising and marketing that
Sure.
you do, because there's a lot there. But you cover, and I noticed from you that you cover doctors' practices, correct, hospitals. Who are the various? Who are your clients? You know, I guess. Is what I'm asking.
I have worked with a tremendous amount of orthopedics.
Okay.
I have worked with a ton of radiologists. I have worked with heart, not too much hospitals. I try to stay away because you can't get anything done sometimes with hospitals because
Right.
there's such a big committee.
Right.
But to be honest with you, it's tough to get anything done when you're dealing with doctors because, as you know, doctors think they're marketing people. And, you know, so, but we know how to get around them. So we've done a lot of practices,
Okay.
you know, so. And we've worked for some health. We just did a new practice in White Plains called Forme. It's urgent care.
Okay.
And they set up this, we started from nuts to bolts, and they have an organization where they have all the modalities.
Okay.
We set them up, and they're doing very well. They're in the first year. So.
Okay. Now, as sort of a segue to talking about the spectrum of what I would call advertising possibilities or marketing possibilities or modalities, let's take a sort of a theoretical case. Let's say I come to you and I've got a new company, whether it's a new medical practice or a hospital or an ambulatory surgery center, and let's say I've got a really significant budget. I've got carte blanche with what I want to spend. The parent corporation has said this is going to be the focus of our new growth. Do what you can. So, as a client,
where do we sign? Let's go.
But now I come to you and I say, I want you to design, bumper to bumper marketing plan for me, with all the different things that you can do, emphasizing, the things that you think are important. You take that, and what do you do with that?
Okay. First thing we're going to do, and it might sound simple to you, but you have a name.
Right.
Okay. So we have to take your name, and your name is your brand. And we need to do a symbol, or what we call a logo.
Right.
And we go through the process of doing many different logos, different designs, that's going to kind of give your personality
identity.
of your identity of your firm.
Yeah.
Probably the most important thing is your name and your brand.
Okay.
So that's the first thing we do. But a question I would ask you is, what do you want to say about your practice? What is your feeling? What is your mission? What is your passion?
As a matter of fact, let's make this, we'll sort of go along, but I'll say that, let's say I've got a pain management practice,
Right.
all right, large pain management practice, and I want to emphasize quality, and I want to emphasize availability, and I want to emphasize a compassionate one-on-one relationship. Things that I think anybody would argue with. So let's take that.
Okay. So now what we have to come up with is a phrase that's going to 3 or 4 words that are going to just to say what you would do.
Okay.
Compassion, care, best. I'm going off. So that would be your theme.
So that's your next step.
That's your next step.
Okay.
And then we'd put materials together, but we would do a lot of research on your competitors to see what they're doing and what they're not doing.
Okay.
This is where we'll talk about digital marketing, because a lot of that goes into that. But we would just put together a whole program, a logo design, then we would talk about your saying, then we put your web design together. Used to be you do all the brochures, well, of course, business cards and letterhead, with that going. Usually we would do all the collateral material, which is the traditional, before we would do the website.
Right.
Now we write the website and do the search engine optimization, and then we come back and do the collateral.
You mean the print materials?
Comes after most. Well, we try to do it together, but we need to get you online immediately.
All right. But this all follows after your strategic plan, or
Yes.
do you sort of work and build the plan as you're doing the marketing?
No, we do a strategic plan. We go, we do our research on your type of practice and what other doctors have been doing around the country.
Okay.
But I must tell you, I think something I need to tell you is what we do is not brain surgery. What you do is brain surgery, to me. But for what we do, it's not brain surgery.
Okay.
Marketing a doctor or marketing a developer, it's all about what you have to offer and how you can help the average person or family.
Okay. So we're up to the web now. Moving on to brochures.
Then we always like to have trifolds or something that you can keep and people can take with them,
Okay.
or you can mail. It's not as much as it used to be, but everything we do traditionally, we make PDFs and put it onto your website too, so people can click on those
Okay.
brochures and all that, and they can actually print a copy of it
Okay.
too. So.
Okay.
But we pocket folders with all your modalities, that sort of stuff. It's still important to do that kind of stuff.
Now, at what point do you move into television, radio, and how do you go from the web and the
So
printed?
now this is interesting. Now we can just step aside with the medical.
Okay.
You got to remember, there's a lot of demographics we're dealing with. You're dealing with baby boomers who are my age and are going to be around a long time. These people are going on Google. They are going online, but they like to read a newspaper. They like to feel things.
Right.
And you know what? Your biggest clientele are probably the baby boomers.
For healthcare, absolutely. Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And you know, they're smart.
Yeah.
A lot of, you know, most of them are smart. They don't want to be sold. They want to be made to feel good about something. They don't have as much. They don't want to spend as much time studying about something. They need to be told, and they will make a choice, and then they will come to the doctor or to the practice. So, but I love reading the New York Times on the weekend.
Right.
And I will tell you, I mean, people say, well, everything's online. Well, you know what? You take a Sunday New York Times and you see a full page, that's $200,000 for that page. Someone is doing it because it's working.
Right.
So, you know, you have to split your time with demographics, and more I hear people say, you know, I miss reading the paper. I miss the, you know, the feel. I miss the intimacy.
Right.
Online is not as intimate as reading a newspaper.
Right.
I read 4 a day, you know, but I enjoy that. But I also do a lot of work on the online too. So,
Right.
but your website and search engine optimization is meaning we optimize behind the scenes with the copy,
Right.
that when people are looking for a pain management doctor in the Hudson Valley, we want you to come organically, not pay-per-click, but organically. We want you to come up 1, 2, or 3. People trust organic a heck of a lot more than they want to click and pay
Right,
and for
right,
that. So
right.
that's another thing. But even in our traditional marketing, we all want to bring them to your website. We'll always say, to see more information, come to
Right.
our website. So we work both. And 39% now of all advertising this year is online. So you're still looking at 61% traditional.
Right.
But with
Traditional, including television and radio, or just
television, radio,
that's
billboards.
40% is online. That's a big
Big time.
chunk. That's a huge chunk.
It's
and I'm sure it's rising. I'm sure it's not
going to
falling.
rise every year,
Yeah.
and it's all targeted.
Yeah.
Everything is targeted online.
Yeah.
And behavioral advertising, for example, say I'm looking to have a facelift, or my wife wants a facelift. So she goes checking on Google,
Right.
and she looks at different doctors.
Right.
Then I've done my research, and maybe I'll do it. Maybe I won't do it. Then the next day she's on Amazon.com wanting to buy something.
Right.
You know what comes up on the right side?
What?
An ad from a plastic surgeon. That's called behavioral advertising.
Right.
And all of a sudden, an actual banner from a plastic surgeon will come up. It's amazing. I got a pool pump this summer, and I Google all the time. And I'm looking, and all of a sudden, next week, all I saw was pool pumps advertising.
Right.
So that's targeted marketing, so they know that she's looking to have plastic surgery. And the smart doctors are doing the behavioral advertising.
Well, I think that now that you mention it, and data, talking about data collection and market research is an entire universe. But I would think that the internet, the way that those connections are made, it's probably really a natural extension of the kind of market research that developed from advertising firms and marketing firms that 20 or 30 years ago they began to get wise to market research. It's probably just an extension of that, I would think, but a very good extension, because now you have a tool the likes of which you never had before. So the level of sophistication is just tremendous,
For the younger audience, they don't read a lot of newspapers. They're
right.
online.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. I think as they get older, you guys are going to even be busier, because their necks are going to be, you're going to have to straighten their necks out, because that's all you see these kids do.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate too, because you got to look at the sky.
Interesting statistic, and we're gonna take a break in just a second. I'm doing a show. The next one we're gonna do is on nutrition. The next segment, the next show we're gonna do is, and I've been reading about nutrition because in medical school we don't learn anything about it. In my medical school we didn't learn anything about nutrition. Things may be different in this day and age. And I was doing some research on obesity. Now, it turns out that by whatever criteria, 1/3 of Americans are considered to be normal weight, 1/3 of Americans are considered to be overweight, and 1/3 of Americans are considered to be obese. And you ask why that is, and it has to do with diet and everything else. But a very interesting statistic emerged when I was looking at this. It turns out that today's kids, and I'm not sure how they define kids, whether it was 14, 15, 16, spend, are you ready for this? 7.5 hours a day in front of a screen of some sort. 7.5 hours a day.
Where we used to play war in the backyard.
Right.
Yeah.
So you go to school for 8 hours a day, you sleep for 8 hours a day, and you have 7.5 hours a day in front of the screen.
Not healthy.
Incredible. So no wonder everybody's in front of the computer.
When I lived in Manhattan, I used to love walking back and forth from one end of Manhattan. When I had business, I never had a weight problem. I mean, it was you burned it off.
Yeah.
I look back as a kid and sleigh riding and all the outside sports, and unfortunately it's all this.
Yeah. Well, they're watching them sleigh right now, so they're getting vicarious.
That's true.
Anyway, we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with our guest, Alan Ross, on Healthcare and Beyond. Welcome back to Healthcare and Beyond. I'm Dr. Larry Rosenberg, and we're speaking with Alan Ross from AJ Ross Creative Media. We've covered a lot of territory, and I think that there is just so much territory to be covered in healthcare marketing, and I think part of that is not just that marketing itself has exploded, particularly with the internet, but also, with the innovations in traditional modes of advertising. But healthcare itself is an ever-evolving beast, if you will. And at the intersection of these two universes, it just makes for some very, very fascinating conversations that we've been having along the way. Alan, we got to talk a little bit about the internet and the internet's effect on, the sort of the role of the internet in advertising, and particularly in healthcare advertising. I was at a presentation, I don't know, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, by a newspaper company. And the newspaper company was one of the better-known newspaper companies in the area here. I forget which one it was. And they came to talk to this organization that I belong to about advertising. They didn't mention a single word about the newspaper. They didn't even mention a single word about TV. All they talked about was social media. All they talked about, all right? And the trend is moving so rapidly towards social media. Tell me about the role of social media in healthcare advertising. Where is it now? Where is it going? How important is it? Is it here to stay? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, let me just talk about social media in any profession. Okay. It's here. I think it's here for a while. Facebook is probably the biggest social media out there. I know a lot of Twitters. I don't tweet, but I know that's a big thing with the younger people. And then you have, all the different ones. And my recommendation is, of course, in fact, before I came here, I did some research, and I went to, I think it was Mount Sinai's Facebook, and they had about 4,000 people, likes. And I looked at what they said, and you know what? They didn't go deep down into the medical aspect. They went, we were part of when they were pouring ice over people. That's being social. If you're going to discuss how to do different operations, people don't want to see that.
Right.
They want light. They want to be social. They want to feel good. They want to know that the people at the hospital are human beings that you're going to go there.
Right.
And but it's viral. It's like when you cough. Social media is like, you like something, you cough, and it spreads. Well, if you share something or your friend shares something,
Right.
it goes to all their people, then it's all their people.
Right.
It's a nice way of introducing yourself and keeping people have your brand. But again, I tell all my clients, and for example, I have AJ Ross has its own Facebook, of course.
Right.
And I had an intern, and all he did was write about Pacific marketing needs, and you would get 4 likes. Then I did an article, I did something on, hey, Kim, my intern just had her birthday today and we had a big party.
Right.
I had 250 likes.
Right.
People want to hear about the human side of social media. So it's here to stay, but we've been talking about online, we're talking about, the newspapers have to talk about it because they don't know which way they're going.
Right.
Except if you're the Time, a lot of newspapers.
Even the Times.
Yeah, they're shutting down. I mean, and it's unfortunate, but, they're running scared, and, it's online, and a lot of it's that, they're not going away, but they're doing more online.
Right.
But as I tell everybody, and I'm going to tell you, we can talk about this. We could talk about the mobile. I'll talk to you about the new voice targeting advertising that I just read about. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, you had mentioned about
it's,
that. Voice, what was it?
It's voice recognition, meaning it's going to be all mobile. And it's going to take SEO and Google, and what you're going to do is they're getting into such a way of doing this that you're going to say, I need a pain management doctor in Hudson Valley who has a degree from Columbia Presbyterian, and then all of a sudden, all that facts are going to come up, so
you'll talk to the machine, and they'll just bring up all that information without having to type it in.
No, the keyboard's going away.
The keyboard's going away.
It's all going to be voice.
Now that's interesting. Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
But we're talking social media and digital, and I tell everybody, what we're doing now, that's the most social way you can be. And a lot of people have forgotten about that, about networking and taking people out to lunch and visiting their clients and sitting and talking eye to eye.
Right.
That's people talking to people instead of people on machines talking to people on machines.
Okay.
The social part is right here.
Right.
This is social.
Right.
This is the best marketing you'll ever do. If people see us, they're going to say, wow, these guys are pretty smart. I might want to call them to be my doctor or to help me advertise.
Okay.
I always say that.
But now, social media is a phenomenon. It's like the internet, it's a
zillion-dollar ability.
It's a community within a community. But let's say that I'm this company a pain management company with certain value system and a logo and a strategic plan that we sort of put together. How do you utilize the social media? A client comes to you, and how do you utilize the social media as part of your marketing campaign? Do you build them a Facebook page?
Yes, we do.
And how do you get their message? How do you get their value system? How do you get what they're going to offer to the average person into that social media? Because the social media itself seems to me to be somewhat random and spontaneous. You can't deliver a message to somebody by social media in the same way that you can give them a brochure, if I understand it correctly. So there's a kind of a challenge
there. Is also a way, and Facebook changes, and we'll talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is more business to business.
Okay.
If you want your colleagues to know what you're doing, or you're looking for a doctor to work for you, or that's LinkedIn. That's a business, and I highly recommend it to practices who are looking for each other.
Right.
Social media, there's ways of Facebook changes all the time, but anyone could put a header on the top, but that's
Right.
really important what you say there. But do you know there are buttons on the side left that almost act as mini websites where you click and you can show different parts of your website coming
Right.
up, and we put those together for
Okay,
everyone.
okay.
If you look on my social media, on my Facebook, you can click it and you'll see my whole portfolio with all my brochures. And if you want to see more, again, no matter what kind of advertising, we wanted them either to call you or to
Right.
click to your website.
Okay. Okay.
And social media, again, we put that together, but we want to, for example, we want to make sure that you get likes. And one of the ways you're going to get likes for your company is you're going to have all your friends on your regular Facebook
Right.
join you and like your Facebook as a
Right.
company.
Right.
That starts it, and then you can reach out to some of your customers, patients.
Right.
And but instead of saying, Dr. Larry did a procedure today that included blah, 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 blah.
Right.
You say, hey, Dr. Larry just got together with all the docs and everyone in the office, and we had a lunch, and we had a ball, and we had this, and we had that, and, blah, and that's social. And then I looked at Mount Sinai, and it says, we also have come up with a new procedure that's going to help, and, you spread it out.
So you sort of, I guess if I were to use a metaphor, if I understand you correctly, you sort of ride the wave.
You tell stories.
Okay.
It's all about telling stories.
It's all about
telling
stories.
getting
Okay.
the people to want to be part. I mean, you could read a book,
Okay.
Patterson book, and be enthralled, or you could read, a history book. What are you going to enjoy most, Patterson or a history book? Well, it depends on who you are, but most people are going to like
I'll
it.
enjoy both.
Yeah, me too.
Especially if Patterson were to write a history book. Now that would be
Yeah,
really
he's
something,
terrific.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm reading
He's
his book
great,
now.
isn't he?
Yeah, he is, James. I met him too, so.
Interesting. Interesting. I want to switch gears completely here because we talked a lot about marketing, about the internet, about social media, but you've been in the business of dealing with doctors and with healthcare organizations for a while. And my feeling is that if you look at the history of marketing, if you are a student of advertising, and you look at all the advertisements that have taken place over the course of the last 50 years, it's interesting as a history of advertising, but it's more interesting as a cultural history of the United States, all right? You can understand, or you can get a glimpse or an insight into the mind of the public by looking at what the advertising is
absolutely.
from year to year. Tremendous, and I can tell you that
It's all science. It's a science.
yeah, and I remember as far back as the advertisements from the 60s. And if you just look at the advertisements from the 60s and you look at the advertisements from today and you look at a half an hour's worth of TV ads from both, you can tell a very coherent, you can write an encyclopedia, but you can put together a very coherent story about people's outlooks, their concerns, their value systems, just on the basis of that. Having said that, and I think you agree with me on that,
I do.
talk to me about how you have seen the change take place in our doctor-patient relationship, in our medical profession, as the years have sort of passed by, and what has been the effect also of some of this internet. But more your observations.
Very interesting. In my dad's day, the 40s and early 50s,
Right.
you would see billboards, and it would say, Dr. So-and-so
Right.
likes camels. So,
Camels like cigarette camels.
yeah, like Camel cigarettes. Meaning, if my doctor likes it and smokes Camels, it's
It'd be
okay
a different
for you.
country if it was a different
Yeah.
kind of camel. You know,
You got
we'd
me.
be in the desert
But
somewhere.
again, that
smoking
was
camel,
that
probably.
was the tobacco industry telling, because if a doctor says it's okay to smoke a Camel cigarette, it's okay. Meanwhile, I mean, they're all dead. I mean, but that's, the public has become more aware. things go like this. Whereas in the old days, you had to wait till the next day to get your newspaper.
Right.
Now everything's right in front of you. Also, let's admit the expertise of medicine and the advancements of medicine are tremendous. Tremendous.
Exponential.
Just tremendous. And people are getting more involved now because, again, I want to talk to you about the baby boomers. The baby boomers don't ever think they're going to get old. I mean, they don't think they're ever going to get old.
Right.
And guess what? They're getting old. I feel it. They're getting old. So, but to market medicine, it's more of, for example, the best marketing I see, there's a television show called New York Med.
Right, you told me about that, yeah.
And it's on every Tuesday.
Yeah.
It was the most watched TV show last Tuesday night for the last 4 weeks about Columbia Presbyterian. The most, at 10 o'clock at night
Really?
on Tuesday, it was the most watched.
Wow.
Because people are interested.
Right.
And how they marketed themselves is they had the finest doctors going through the procedures. And you saw these brilliant people in emergency rooms. What a better way of marketing a medical practice than seeing it on TV. They're brilliant. And it's Oz. It's Dr. Oz. He put it all together.
Right.
But you want to talk about bad marketing?
Right.
Let's talk about his show when he's selling, he's selling all this raspberry stuff. It's quackery. And he got in a lot of trouble because of it, so.
We did talk a little earlier, and I want to come back to this because I think this is very important. The doctor-patient relationship, the impact that technology has had, both positive and negative, on that perhaps most important, or some of the most important relationships that we have and continue to have in the course of our life.
Go
ahead.
Let me try to do this from my Dr. Friedman that I've known for 35 years.
Right.
To my experiences with other doctors
Okay.
now. About 35 years ago, when I was a kid, I was getting palpitations. I mean, real bad palpitations. It happened a lot. I smoked a little bit, but I was getting and I was recommended to see this doctor. And I walked in, and I saw 5, 6 other doctors. Well, we don't know what it is.
Right.
Okay. So I walk in there, and he has a stethoscope on.
Right.
And he puts the and he says, I know exactly what you have, but I'm going to do an echo before I do that exam. And I said, no. I want you to tell me what you think I have. He says, you have a prolapse valve. I think that's
Mitral valve prolapse, yeah.
Took an echo,
Very
boom,
common.
gave me some Medicaid. I haven't had a problem since. You go to some of these doctors now, especially with the digital age,
Right.
and all they're doing is typing away. And
While you're there,
well, that's how
in the
they
room with them.
That's how they get on the records. I mean, it's all digital, and which is a good thing because eventually, if we get this all the way through, you won't have 4 MRIs done by the same patient in 2 weeks. At least they could. But still, that's all they're doing is typing, and then they come and they look at you and they give you a little time and they go back and type and say thank you, see you later. I went to see my doctor, and he had a stethoscope on. I said, do you still use? He says, that's what I use. That's medicine. I says, I don't see that a lot. He said, the young doctors don't use that stethoscope.
Oh, yeah.
That's basic medicine.
That is.
That's basic medicine.
It's basic medicine, and it's basic talking to people, but it's hands-on.
But I've worked with some young doctors that are wonderful. I mean, I had a knee replacement. I mean, I didn't have a good one. And I went to some of the finest hospitals to get it fixed, but there was a doctor on Staten Island, a guy named Montalbano, and he knew exactly what was wrong, and he fixed it. He listened to me. Doctors have to start listening again, not only to the patient, but with that stethoscope and listening.
A lost art. It is a lost art.
It's scary that it's a lost art. Same thing with social media.
Yep.
You still got to talk to people. You still got to get to know who they are. So, but I think the medical profession is so much better than it ever has been. But it's scary because of the health care and the insurance companies. Some of these poor doctors, they're working around the clock just to keep their practices going. It's too bad.
It's a different world.
Yep.
It's a different world.
But that doesn't mean anything when I walk into your office. You better take good care of me. You better. But then another thing they're concerned about is being sued. So, that's why there's all those tests.
It is, and it would be an interesting conversation for us to have, to talk about the way that all those other things have impacted medicine and the way that we deal with patients. And it certainly had, even in the course of my 28 years being a doctor, it has changed quite dramatically.
The best marketing and the best a doctor can do to build his practice is word of mouth.
Yeah.
Is referrals from patients saying, I went to this doctor, he listened to me, he helped me, he was wonderful.
Alan, I want to thank you. We come to the end of our time here, and it's just been an absolutely fascinating conversation, and I certainly hope to have you back at some time if you'd love to join us.
I appreciate you taking the time, and it was very enjoyable. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Alan. Again, Larry Rosenberg here from Healthcare and Beyond, and we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thank you very much for joining in.